My plan is to hide, to avoid, but if I get busted, if I get captured, I'm not going to do a Rambo, I'm going to do a Gandhi. If I get captured, I'm not going to do a Rambo, I'm going to do a Gandhi. If I get captured, I'm not going to do a Rambo, I'm going to do a Gandhi.
Does that sound like the words of a domestic terrorist about to go on a mass killing spree? It doesn't sound like that to me either. That's his address, Schaeffer Cox. We pray that you guys write him a letter, let him know that you love him, care about him, you have not forgot about him. I got an email from him this morning because we had so much positive feedback regarding Bryce Matthew Quellar when we wrote to the judges for his probation. I said maybe we need to start a letter writing campaign to the Ninth Circuit. And so I think Schaeffer has written a form letter for the Ninth Circuit. I'll put this in the description, plus I'll upload it to the website at some point in the next day or so, but it will be in the description or at least in the comment section if it fits. It's a very long email. But if you don't have access to it, reach out to me, but I'll try to make sure it's on this video, or I'll put it up on the website immediately after I make this video. Let's read what Schaeffer has to say. July the 3rd, 2017. Keep in mind he's got an appeal coming up in August. It's an oral argument. There's an oral argument going on in Alaska. Okay, it's going to be live streamed too, by the way. Hi guys, I sent you all a super long email form letter for the Ninth Circuit judges. It is targeted at the legal standards that govern prosecutors' use of lies to obtain wrongful conviction. The controlling case in that is called NAPU. It basically says that if it becomes known that a prosecutor knowingly used perjured testimony, even on a minor point, to get a conviction, that is, as the Supreme Court says, a veritable hair trigger for reversal. Rudy has the NAPU case. It was cited in Schulke report on page 504 as it was applied to my very prosecutors at around the time they were railroading me. Anyway, the super long email I sent you speaks to all the key points of NAPU in the hopes of pulling that hair trigger. You all can sign that email and send it to the Ninth Circuit as is, or you can read it for inspiration for your own letter. But pass it all over the world for everyone to see and send it along. If Rudy puts his videos with it, it will prove beyond all doubt that the prosecutors lied to convict me. Thousands upon thousands of people voicing their disapproval of that will matter to the courts, even if they say it doesn't, or that they can't consider anything outside of the record, because you better believe they read all their emails, and you may want to send them a link to the press release article that has all the links in it. That's on WhoFrameSchaefferCox.com. It's the front page. That will get their attention too, because it is so well buttressed with sources and citations. Schaeffer Cox. It says, Dear Ninth Circuit judges, but let me go to Year of Jubilee and go to Schaeffer Cox. This is their address. So don't forget, you got to have the address, right? Make that a little bit bigger. Office of the Clerk, James R. Browning Courthouse, blah, blah, blah. It's right there on the screen. Okay. Let's read the letter. Dear Ninth Circuit judges, I am writing to you about Schaeffer Cox case number 13-30,000. That is on appeal in front of you right now from the Federal District Court in Alaska. This whole case is scary and corrupt mess. I don't know how it made it this far, or how these prosecutors aren't in jail themselves after all the lies they told to the judge and jury to convict Schaeffer Cox for imaginary crimes he obviously didn't commit. The truth has came out, and I'm appalled. Schaeffer Cox has no prior criminal history and comes from a good family. His father is a West Pointer. Schaeffer Cox has never used drugs or alcohol or been mixed up in any such foolishness. He is a well-educated businessman. He is not a criminal or a bad guy or anything like that. All he was doing was speaking his opinion and saying how we need to reduce corruption and put more value on the Constitution and people's rights. Because of this, Cox was targeted by some corrupt FBI agents and politically motivated assistant U.S. attorneys for talking smack about the government. End quote. I know this for a fact because I heard the recording of FBI agent Westerhouse saying so with his own mouth. Here's the link to the video, Westerhouse talking smack video. I'll have to look that up. I know Schaeffer has referred to that. You got to keep in mind I have a terabyte hard drive that has a ton of data on it. So this will go on my things to do, and we'll just leave it at that. It's the right and duty of the American people to talk smack about our government officials when they are doing corrupt things. Who is this Westerhouse guy's boss, and why is he not properly supervising him? Or is Westerhouse just the low man on the totem pole who slipped up and told the truth about what his corrupt boss was doing to Schaeffer Cox? They investigated Schaeffer Cox for no good reason, just like the Gestapo and Stasi used to do. Then when the FBI agent found out Cox wasn't doing anything bad, they paid street thugs to try to bully Cox into plotting a crime. When Cox told the thugs that was a bad idea, one of the thugs, Bill Fulton, attacked Schaeffer Cox's friend, Les Zerby, with a hunting knife and held it to his throat while saying he was going to slit his throat open unless Cox and Zerby agreed to commit a crime. And the only reason... Give me just a second, I'm going to close the door in the background. Yeah, sorry about that. There's some background noise and I had to go close the door. And the only reason that Bill Fulton attacked Zerby instead of Cox was because Cox was holding his 2-year-old baby son in his arms. Here's a link to the video. Fulton video. This was last summer when we didn't know which way it was going to Schaeffer and if they were going to take his kid. I was seriously going to kill Les. I was going to bleed him out at my feet. I had a knife and I was coming over the counter. What do you mean you have no plan? Why am I having to write a letter like this? Are these FBI agents and their street thug business partners just completely out of control? Who supervises them? You would think that if someone talked about the FBI holding a knife to someone's throat and telling them to commit a crime, that would only be a figure of speech. But this actually happened. Why? Who gave the green light to do this? I want to know. Because this craziness shouldn't be going on in a developed country with a functioning government. And this was not some fluke incident that only happened once. After Schaeffer Cox told the thugs no and reported them to the local police and assistant U.S. attorney, who did nothing, he still lived in fear of the thugs. Cox somehow managed to not run into Bill Fulton again, so the FBI just had their thugs send more of Bill Fulton's death threat ultimatums to Cox through third parties. Again, I've heard this with my own ears. Here's a link to the video. Fulton video. Schaeffer needs to make a plan, so when you guys get back to Fairbanks, I want you to remember him about what happened last time when I almost killed Les. I have that video. Schaeffer Cox isn't a criminal. He has zero criminal history and no predisposition to commit crimes of any sort, much less a violent crime. So when he got this do-or-die death threat, he packed up his wife and 2 little kids and tried to leave the country to get away from the danger. That's all he knew to do. Cox was in fear of his life. Cox had already seen Bill Fulton commit an armed violent assault previously when Fulton got mad at Cox for refusing to plot a crime. So Cox knew it was serious when Fulton said he'd kill Cox if Cox said no to another one of Fulton's proposed crimes. Schaeffer Cox said he was committed to being like Gandhi, not Rambo, and he just wanted to get himself and his family away from the danger for good. I know this is true because I've heard it myself. Here's a link to the video. Schaeffer video. I'm going to be a Gandhi, not a Rambo. That's why I'm leaving, because that's what has the brightest future for me and my family. Because costing the enemy is not my objective. I don't have hatred from them in my heart. I would forgive them and have all sorts of redemption towards them. The FBI case agent on this case knew that Cox had rejected any violent or criminal, anything violent or criminal. He knew Cox was scared for his life and leaving the country for his and his family's safety. The lead prosecuting attorneys, Scrocky and Bottini, both knew it too. I know this because I've seen their emails back and forth saying so. Here's a link to the emails. June 2010 email. Schaeffer Cox was exposed as a self-aggrandizing fraud. He had no plan. Also, Schaeffer Cox does not want CHS2 to know he's in town, wants CHS1 to broker deal, willing to discuss trucker to arrange transport. Also, any idea of Schaeffer Cox's intention with the list, especially in light of the fact that he's leaving. This can all be found in the 24-page addendum to the pre-sentence report 3:11-CR-22-RJB docket 535-1 sealed. But rather than let the honest, non-criminal, innocent Schaeffer Cox just say no and walk away, FBI agent Rick Sutherland sent in one of FBI's local business partners, J.R. Olson, who is a well-known con man and self-described drug wholesaler with a criminal record a mile long. The infamous local drug lord, J.R. Olson, actually chased the Cox family down as they were driving to leave the country and disabled their vehicle in the middle of the Alaska wilderness, many miles from help, in the dead of a dangerously cold sub-zero winter, where you will freeze to death if your car dies. Cox had his wife, 2-week-old daughter, and 3-year-old son with him at this point. J.R. Olson reminded the Cox family that their lives were in danger from Bill Fulton, who was now looking for them since Cox had again refused to sign up for violence. J.R. Olson then made up a story about how if the Cox family went with him and hid out in the attic of a friend's house, they would be safe until he could arrange a trucker to haul them out to safety. This trucker story was all just a lie to convince the Cox family that help was on the way. The Cox family didn't even know this J.R. Olson guy, but with their car disabled by him and in fear for their lives from Bill Fulton, the Cox family had no other choice but to go with Olson and wait on the trucker to arrive and give them a ride to safety. Here's a link to the video of trucker lies from Olson. This is a case of the FBI telling a well-known local drug lord who's a guilty criminal to go kidnap an innocent family for corrupt political reasons. What the heck is going on with Alaska? The violent armed assault with the hunting knife wasn't enough. They have to also go kidnap a 2-week-old baby girl, a 3-year-old boy, and their mother and father, who are running in fear of their lives. This actually violates some major international human rights treaties that forbid just this sort of thing. Never mind that it's also illegal under domestic law. This local drug lord held the whole Cox family hostage against their will for 21 days in that attic, with no crime having been committed, but not wanting to let them go either. Then they finally told Schaeffer Cox that the trucker had arrived. But it wasn't a trucker waiting for him. It was a SWAT team ambush. This just screams corruption and foul play. I'm both angry and terrified by the fact that this was allowed to happen in America. So let's see if we can sum up everything to this point in one run-on sentence. Schaeffer Cox and his friends and family have never done anything criminal in their whole lives. So when the FBI sent in paid street thugs to literally hold a knife to their throats to try to convince them to become criminals, it's no surprise that Cox says no and tries to run for his life with his young family in tow, only to be actually forcibly kidnapped under threat of death by a well-known local drug lord who works in partnership with the corrupt FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office in Alaska, namely Stephen Scrocky and Joseph Bottini, who have a very high profile and controversial history of corruptly going after their political critics. Then, after what these crooks called the takedown, they charged Schaeffer Cox with conspiracy to murder federal officials, but they didn't and still can't offer anything specific, such as who or when or how or why. The so-called conspiracy is just some generalized North Korea-type political sin of disloyalty to El Jefe. As FBI agent Westerhouse said, it's all because Cox had been talking smack about the government. And it gets even worse. The prosecutor Bottini ended up under investigation for lying and hiding evidence in several related political cases. So Bottini made Scrocky the #1 on the case and then sat in the gallery whispering instructions to Scrocky over the bar on how to railroad Schaeffer Cox, the man they both knew was innocent. Bottini, through his willing puppet Scrocky, lied to the judge and to the jury and coached their local drug lord business partner J.R. Olson to lie under oath to the jury. They falsely swore that Bill Fulton never made threats that Schaeffer Cox was not leaving the country for his safety and that Cox had agreed to some sort of violent plan against the government. All three of those statements are the exact opposite of the truth, and Scrocky, Bottini, Fulton, and Olson all knew it, and I've seen the video that prove this. Here's the link. Proof that Scrocky lied to the judge and had Olson lie to the jury. And by the way, I've heard all of the fantastical spook stories about how Schaeffer Cox was some sort of closet monster plotting murder and mayhem and going to hang a bunch of feds or something. I don't believe any of it. The evidence just doesn't support it, and Scrocky has zero credibility given all his lies. After deceiving the court, the jury, and the public, Scrocky and Bottini had Schaeffer Cox thrown in some gulag type of secret 38-man prison called the Communications Management Unit that obstructs his access to his attorneys and has severely punished him for responding to inquiries from a movie producer who wants to make a film about the Schaeffer Cox case. Again, this just screams corruption and foul play. Who is in charge of oversight? Were the people who did this crazy stuff directed to do it, or did they do it on their own without approval by DOJ? These are fair questions that I have a right to know the answers to as an American and a stakeholder in this country. Who is responsible for this train wreck? Now, this case is finally before your court, and I am here to tell you that the truth has recently come out for all people to see. The proof speaks for itself. As far as I'm concerned, it's not Schaeffer Cox who is on trial anymore. It's Scrocky, Bottini, Olson, and Fulton, and really the whole judicial system now that it's gone on this long without something being done to correct this mess. Nobody forced Scrocky to get up there and lie to the judge and jury. That was his choice. He didn't realize it at the time, but he was testifying against himself. He was offering us absolute proof that he had no respect for the court, or the process, or the rules, or the facts, or professional ethics. He knew he was lying. His emails prove it, but he just did it anyway. He knew his witnesses were lying. The recordings prove it, but he coached them to do it anyway. This whole dirty case is built on what Scrocky knew was perjury. Yes, I am outraged, but that's only because the stuff that was done in this case is outrageous. It's bad enough that they had their local thugs commit violent assaults and had their local drug lord kidnap a whole family, all to get back at an innocent man who spoke ill of their corruption. But then for Scrocky to come into court of law and lie about it so they could bury a man they knew was innocent in a secret prison, that's even worse. They robbed Schaeffer Cox of his freedom. They robbed his kids of their father. But they robbed me of my faith in the justice system. Just throw this whole case out right now. And then this is an incredibly important and articulate letter. He gives me a lot of homework. I'm going to have to go find out the videos for that, and that's going to take a lot of time, but it's going to be worth it. So I'm going to put this on my things to do and raise the priority of it. There's a lot of things going on, but I do need to try to identify the videos for this article that Schaeffer has put together, and I think it's incredibly powerful as I read it, and it's starting to sink in. This is good. It explains the whole kidnapping thing, and it goes through various articulate legal reasons why this case should be thrown out and Schaeffer should be let free. So please don't forget to write Schaeffer a letter. That's his address. In closing, the last line of peaceful defense between a tyrannical government and the defendant is jury nullification. Educate yourself about jury nullification at fija.org, fija.org. Thank you for your time.